Hi, thanks for joining me. This is Angie at angiejuda.com, and this is the first video for the Lulu Roses quilt. Okay, so this first video, we're just going to kind of go over the supplies a little bit, and I'm going to explain the changes that I've made. Originally, this quilt was larger. We're going to actually make a smaller size so that we can actually get it done in the next 6 weeks. So what we're using is 7 patterns of fabric in the same series. So this is the Lulu Roses by Tanya Wheeling. I love this fabric. And so we're using 7 half yard pieces of fabric. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. In each of these half yard pieces of fabric, you can actually get 12 6.5 by 6.5 blocks. We only need 8. So if you wanted to go ahead and make it larger, you can. But I like to give you enough fabric so that if you mess up, if you cut one row crooked, or if you've, because I'm telling you, this sometimes this thing gets a mind of its own. A half yard is going to do you just fine. You're going to be happy you bought that. And you're also going to want a white jelly roll if white is the dominating color in your fabric. So if you choose a fabric that has ivory, then you want to go with ivory. I've seen people also use like navy and red, and oh, they've turned out beautiful. I'm always going to lean towards the white or the ivory for my sashing. And you won't need all of this, but again, it's better to have too much than too little. Coordinating thread. You're going to need your rotary cutter, cutting mat, and then of course your big old ruler. You are going to need one that measures 6.5 inches because that's the size of our block. You're going to need some pins, tape measure, your iron. I'll make sure I put all of those supplies on my website. Now, for the first step that we're going to do is we're actually going to cut. I'm just making sure that I've got this right. Yeah, because our quilt is going to be going 7 blocks across and 8 blocks down. Now, this picture on this instruction sheet that I've typed out for you guys, it actually is a larger one. Just ignore this picture. You're going to actually cut off 2 rows there. So that way, this is the actual size that we're going to make. It's going to measure approximately 58 by 66. We're not touching the length. We're just making it 2 rows thinner. Okay, so I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so I've got my first half yard fabric here, and I've got my salvage on the ends. And what I want to do is make sure that my edge is nice and straight. So what I'm going to do is line it up on the right side, and I'm going to trim it. Okay, and the person that cut this fabric did a pretty good job. I don't have to cut very much. I'm going to remove the safety off of my rotary cutter, and now I have trimmed that off. Now I'm going to turn the fabric over. Okay, and I'm going to line this up at the 6.5 inch mark, and I'm going to make my first cut. Now, another piece of advice to give you is technically you are supposed to iron your fabric before you cut it. I don't do that. But if you iron it, it's going to cut straighter, okay? So here's my first 6.5 inch strip. Okay, so I'm just going to line this up at the 6.5. Okay. Now what we want to do is remove the salvage. You can use a smaller ruler for this if you want to. And then what you're going to do is turn it over, and you want to cut 6.5 inch strips. I guess they're not really strips, they're squares. So 6.5. So this gives us 2. And then we're going to cut again. That makes 4. That makes 6. Now we've got to trim the salvage off of this one. And then this final one is going to give us a total of 8. And that's what we want, is 8 squares of 7 patterns of fabric. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8. And I do believe I'm probably going to press these so that they will turn out a little bit better. So now I'm going to repeat that same process on the other 7 or the other 6 patterns of fabric. This is what's left over. So if you guys want to go ahead and make the larger quilt, you have plenty of fabric to do so, okay? So when I come back, I'm going to have all of my squares cut, and then we're going to cut our jelly roll strips.